Hi, I am Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a clinical psychologist in Newport Beach, California, and this post is really about grief and loss, not only for those of us who had connections to Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna and all of the beautiful parents and children on board, but it's also just about what it's like to still be grieving someone that maybe you didn't know and why that could still be happening. Last week, since I work in this community, obviously there were many people who came into my office crying, those who knew Kobe and those on board and those who didn't. And if you knew the families, I think it makes sense. It's also just happened a week ago. But this post is for those of you who didn't know Kobe, but can't figure out why you're still crying. So first of all, it was a huge loss for the sports community, for the world, for basketball, for those people who truly loved and adored Kobe and all he stood for. He wasn't a perfect person. There is no perfect person. And this post isn't about that. It's just about saying, why does stuff like that affect us so deeply? So the first reason is that it was Kobe Bryant and that it was his daughter and that it was as this time was unfolding, these other victims on board and the information coming out. But the first one is just the loss of Kobe and what he could have still done for our world, for our community. The second issue is that it's traumatic. And so our brains are not wired for these kinds of traumas. We are here today and we're doing something, and the next thing you know, we've lost somebody that we care about. And so the brain centers around fear and processing and all of that. Those are all sort of flipping offline as we're trying to make sense of what happened. And so people were saying things like, I couldn't stop thinking about the last few minutes before the helicopter crash. I can't stop thinking about, were they on social media? What were the girls doing? What was happening? How much time did they know before it went down? And these can really connect to the trauma thoughts around a loss like that. The third thing is that looking at the pictures on social media between Kobe and Gianna, many people felt triggered by their relationship, seeing how much love they had for one another, looking at the father-daughter relationship. And for some people, the idea of, I wish I had that, or I did have that and I lost it, or this was the life I always longed for in terms of parent-child connection. So that can trigger your own stuff. So you're seeing the images of Kobe and Gianna, but it's really bringing up your own story around your parent and child relationship. Obviously, the next one is for many people, and especially the kids I saw that I know and read about last week, this idea of losing someone so young, that these children were really just young teens. Really, they had their whole life in front of them. And so there's a lot of grief around, it's so unfair. How could a life end so quickly? They really hadn't begun to live yet. Obviously, for the loss of the beautiful families on board, the coaches, the parents, the pilot, the idea that there'll be no future for them, that's a hard thing to wrap your mind around. And in that vein, it can also trigger your own fear of losing people you love, losing your children, losing your parents, or already having lost them. Not to mention traumas like being in car accidents or being on a plane and almost having a risk of the plane going down, or a bicycle accident. Each of these parts of that crash can trigger your own trauma and your own fear of it happening to you or losing someone you love. The next one is obviously for those of us in Newport Beach and LA and places that Kobe was such a huge part of in his own childhood neighborhood. This brings up personal connections to feeling like you knew him or having kids who knew him, having your kids know him, things like that. Not to mention those who were living in our community and had such a great impact on and such a great reach and touch to so many people in our community. It also brings up this idea that seeing Kobe and losing him, we feel like we know him, even if we never saw him pumping gas nearby. We never went to a Lakers game. This idea that celebrities are somehow invincible and they don't really have to deal with mortality, but of course they do. And so I think what comes up for many people is, my gosh, if Kobe could die this way, and yes, it was dying in a helicopter, which not everybody goes into, but people die in car accidents every single day. People lose their children, their loved ones, their family members, their spouses, And so the connection to watching Kobe die really reminds us that we're not invincible, and that we're really reckoning with our own mortality every day. And so seeing the images, listening to the saturation of news, it really can trigger that part that how could it happen to him? And yet if it could happen to him, it could also happen to me or someone I love. So here's what you can do. If you are feeling still sad about Kobe, and especially if you don't know him and you didn't know anyone on the helicopter, but you can't figure out why it's still bothering you, you can do some things like this. You can let yourself feel the feelings. You can do some journaling and see what comes up for you, because the chances are, if this is still bothering you, unless you were a super fan of Kobe Bryant's, and obviously care about losing him and his family and everyone else on board, if it's bigger than that, it may have a connection to your own life. And so you may need to talk to somebody. You may need to look at some maybe trauma memories you thought were long gone, and now they're sort of coming up again and rising underneath the surface for you. You might want to think about mending broken relationships. I know I read an article, I think, that Shaq had decided to make some repairs, because it truly reminds us how precious and momentary life can be, that there's no guarantee that any of us will reach old age, that any of us will be here tomorrow. Important to do things like take good care of yourself, take a walk, get some exercise. If you're already depressed and this is bringing up more feelings, you might want to reach out and contact a therapist or a counselor or somebody in your immediate vicinity to help you get the help that you need. Remember that everybody grieves differently. And so whatever's coming up for me might not be what's coming up for you. And this is especially true for our kids. If you're noticing that your kids are still struggling, in our neighborhood here, we do have many kids, because of the nature of the kids on board, many people here had some connection to the children on board the plane, to Alyssa and Gianna and to Payton. And so that's bringing up a lot of things for them. So remember to just, honor your child's grief. But if your child lives somewhere across this planet and didn't even know these kids, it's still possible that this is triggering things for them, especially because we're so saturated with media content around these issues. Your kids could be clingier. They could be more fearful of, hey, are you going to the store? Where are you going? When are you going to be back? This idea that it can come up that we're worried for each other, that we know that we could lose each other. So just trying to be reassuring, hey, it's okay, I'm here, I'll be safe. We don't want to start talking about all the what ifs. We don't want to make promises and guarantees, but our kids need to know that by and large, they're going to be safe, it's going to be okay. And we just want to give them and ourselves the space to grieve, the space to feel it. And I just want to say one last thing, and that's, I just want to say to Kobe and Gianna, Payton, Sarah, John, Alyssa, Keri, Christina, and Ara, we care about you, we care about your families, and for everyone who's had loss in their life, please take good care of yourself, and you don't have to be alone. So I hope that you will post down below in the comments any love you want to share, anything you think I forgot, just to let everyone know that we're not alone, and that whether it's this loss of this particular beautiful icon and families, or it's your own loss, you don't have to do it alone. Please reach out, please share your story, and please take good care of yourself. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.